Kevin, my next question might be a bit unfair to ask. I've been dancing around some of this. You're a fiscal studies expert, but I'd love to get your take on modern monetary theory. Does that, obviously, the idea is to create money to power fiscal policy. Have you done any studying of this, and do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, so yeah, I think the financial markets, analysts really around the world are looking at the way the government debt is being put onto central bank balance sheets. We've seen enormous expansion we've seen of the balance sheet of the central banks really in Canada, but across the world. So a significant part of the increase in the debt, and it is enormous, has been put on the Bank of Canada is putting on its sheet, in addition to a lot of provincial bonds and some commercial paper. So again, it's putting less pressure on the financial markets in order to sell this debt. And again, I think it's, in terms of, the modern financial monetary sort of theory, it's really based upon like, we could pretty much continue along these lines until inflation becomes a problem. And I think like right now, a pandemic is very deflationary.
Right.
So, I think the CPI and that it's for the most part, it's, the growth on a year-over-year basis about 1.5%. But you can definitely see signs that spikes in prices, certainly in the housing sector. You could see it in the commodity prices, particularly like in the forestry side, which is again more construction related. And again, if you look at wages and salaries, notwithstanding the fact that we have a fairly weak labor market, average annual earnings are growing, 4 or 5%. So I think this is, again, we have to monitor this. And it's so even the modern, the monetaristic kind of thinking that we can continue to do this. Inflation is always out there. I started Department of Finance in early 1980s.
Right.
I was the inflation analyst, and inflation was, as you recall, it was in the 13% range, and interest rates were north of that. So, like, it could happen because we just have extraordinary monetary and fiscal policy expansion going on right now.
Well, certainly there's a whole generation of folks in Canada that have never seen real inflation like it was back in the early 80s. So hopefully we don't have a recurrence of that. I'd love to get your take, getting back to the budget for a second, get your take on where you think taxation policy is going.
Yeah, so we've seen some international budgets, Tony. Like we saw the UK budget a few weeks ago, where the treasurer, kind of signaled that continual fiscal supports over the next couple of years, but again, a commitment to pay that back with higher corporate income taxes. I think again we're seeing the signals coming out of the United States right now, particularly with with Mr. Biden's infrastructure package, that he's prepared to finance that over a longer period of time with increases in corporate income taxes as well, and potentially like higher progressive income taxes to pay for some of those transfers to individuals as well. So I think the pressure probably more in the medium term about like how do we pay for this big spike in debt that we've seen in Europe and United States and certainly in Canada as well. So yeah, I don't know how much the government will signal that in the budget, but it could become a big an election issue if we were to see an election come this fall.
Do you see any immediate taxation increases? Is that something we should look for in the budget?
Yeah, there's certainly talk about there's some interesting op-eds in the recent days, including some from MPs that talk about the need to tax wealth. Maybe a one-time tax. The member of Parliament from the Toronto Beaches, Mr. Erskine Smith, has talked about that. So I think that's a possibility. I think the government has signaled it would like to start find better ways to tax, e-commerce, where we've seen some pretty
Right.
significant growth in profits. There's a lot of international coordination work that needs to go on there, but again, we could see more signaling of those kinds of revenues, but that's not really going to pay for the kind of the big spike that we've seen in debt over the past year or two. And I think the government's going to be pretty careful. There's still there's still a lot of uncertainty about this recovery, even notwithstanding some of these good numbers from PBO and the conference board. Now is not really a good time to start increasing taxes. Certainly on the general population. But yeah, again, could there be some temptation to tax wealth? I think so.